Directed by David Toohey and released in the year 2000, Pitch Black is the first film in the Chronicles of Riddick series. It is a movie that I really didn't have a lot of expectations for going into it, as I never watched any of the Riddick movies growing up, and I know basically nothing about the franchise other than that Vin Diesel is the lead. I was just looking for a dumb, fun sci fi movie to kill some time after I'd sprained my ankle and was stuck at home, and Pitch Black just happened to be available for free on Amazon Prime. But even though I went into Pitch Black not expecting much, what I found was a movie that exceeded my expectations in the best possible way. Here's why.
Paris P. Ogilvy, antiquities dealer, entrepreneur.
Richard B. Riddick, escaped convict, murderer.
Given that Pitch Black is a sci fi movie with Vin Diesel in the lead role, I was expecting it to be a bombastic, dumb action movie. So when the movie reveals itself to be a survival horror film, I was pleasantly surprised and completely on board. The movie begins with a transport ship crash landing on a desert planet and the survivors stumbling across an abandoned colony. They soon discover that the colony was wiped out by hostile alien creatures that navigate via echolocation and can only survive in darkness. And with an eclipse on the way that lasts for days on end, the survivors are forced to band together despite rising tensions within the group. I love movies that take a very simple premise but execute it so effectively, and Pitch Black is no exception. The movie does a great job of introducing the characters to the audience at the beginning before slowly building up to the reveal of the creatures. I wouldn't be surprised if A Quiet Place took some inspiration from this movie, as it has a very similar premise with its main threat being alien creatures that hunt based on sound. David Toohey wrote one of the earliest drafts of Alien 3, and this movie has been compared a lot to the Alien movies in terms of its aesthetic and story. I can see the connection, but I actually would compare this movie more to Firefly than I would to Alien. The ramshackle industrial look of the ships and the inclusion of real-world religions is very reminiscent of the Firefly universe. It should also be noted that this movie was made for a budget of only $23 million. Even when calculated for inflation, this is not that big of a budget for a sci-fi film. For comparison, Alien Resurrection, which came out 3 years prior, had a budget of $70 million. But in spite of its modest budget, you can really tell that the filmmakers made the most out of what they had to work with. The industrial look for all of the equipment and technology helps the movie to feel more grounded and gritty. And the movie is shot almost entirely in the desert, which works for saving money, but also suits the themes of isolation and desperation that the story is going for. But easily, the strongest aspect of Pitch Black is its lead character. Riddick is such a compelling and entertaining protagonist, and Vin Diesel fits this role perfectly. While he typically hasn't been the most versatile actor, Vin Diesel impressed me with how much material he was given to work with for this character. He is given cool moments, funny moments, and genuinely compelling moments. Riddick could have easily been boring or one note, but I was surprised that that wasn't the case. The character also has a strong mystique because of his dubious sense of morality and his mysterious past. We get little lines of dialogue throughout the movie that hint at his backstory without ever giving everything away. In this regard, Riddick is very reminiscent of the man with no name archetype that is typically seen in westerns. And while Riddick is definitely an anti-hero, he gets enough bonding moments with the other characters to make him likable. My favorite moment in the movie comes at the very end when Fry dies to save Riddick's life and he mutters,
Not for me. Not for me.
It is such a great detail that reveals that in spite of his hardened exterior, there is a glimmer of humanity in Riddick. And while I haven't seen the other Riddick movies yet, I can totally see why this character would be such a strong hook for kicking off a franchise. And outside of Riddick, I like the other characters in the movie as well. Keith David is fantastic in every single role he is in, and the character of Abu adds some depth to this universe as a Muslim taking his Hajj, but in a science fiction setting. I also like the back and forth between him and Riddick about the meaning of faith in the face of a desperate situation. Johns provides some great conflict, being the bounty hunter that caught Riddick and urges the other characters not to trust him. On the surface, he seems like the most trustworthy character, when in reality, he ends up being the one who puts the group in jeopardy. And while Riddick is the protagonist, Fry is the true heart of the movie. Her arc of trying to sacrifice the crew at the beginning of the movie to sacrificing herself at the end is very strong. Overall, the plot and characters hooked me so much more than I was expecting, and I'm still blown away by the fact that all of this was done for a fraction of what most modern sci-fi movies cost.
He is with us nonetheless.
Two of your boys are already dead. How much faith do you have left, Father?
While I have a lot of praise for Pitch Black's story and characters, it is in the production and technicals of the film that its biggest faults lie. While the lower budget works to the film's benefit in giving it a scrappy, grounded look, it also works to its detriment at certain moments. Some of the CGI shots of the creatures haven't aged well, and some of the gore looks pretty goofy. The editing is also really weird at points. There's this one shot when one of the characters is revealed to have been killed by the creatures, but then the movie immediately cuts to the kid being buried and prayed over. It's just a weird way to transition a scene without showing the other characters' reactions. There's also a few moments in the movie when the frame will be stretched out because I'm honestly not entirely sure. It's a really weird technique that pulled me out of the movie every time it happened. Overall, the editing makes this feel like the filmmakers were really trying to find their voice during the production of the movie. These problems are not enough to break the movie for me, but they do pull me out of it when they are present.
So what the hell do we tell them about you?
Tell him Riddick's dead.
As a whole, Pitch Black is an entertaining sci-fi horror film that pleasantly surprised me with how good it is. While the editing and production are a bit rough around the edges, it is very much carried by its strong premise and its intriguing lead character. It just goes to show how far good writing can carry a movie in spite of its budgetary constraints. I think this movie is severely underrated, and if you are a fan of sci-fi horror, this is one you should definitely give a watch. So with that, I'm giving Pitch Black 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'll be very curious to see how the Riddick sequels compare to this movie, so stick around as I cover those films in the future. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and comment down below your own thoughts on Pitch Black and the Riddick franchise. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.